The street is my world. I don't pretend to go uptown and be anything fancy. I can, but I find more real in the world that I'm in than I do the tinsel. And the real world is the one I have to deal with every day, you know. Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
Let the bass kick.
Playtime been over since y'all dropped the ball. Bound to the continent, there's no asylum for y'all. Pushing the black Asiatic game with Ford L and Pool Bay. Before NOI, I rep draw L all day. How many fakes proclaim to be the reincarnation and claim to be the true head of the Moorish nation? No mention of Mealy Ill, but I read his letters. Dirty Moors mad cause they thought they dead as letters. Many were there when decisions were handed down. Now they claim that Mealy was not ordained, not commissioned, not called or appointed. With divine plans for ages, but Dirty Moors making changes. Working with FBI during infiltrations. In a pheasant alleys giving bogey smoke inhalations. And secret wars were made, heads unmade in public mentions. Don't believe, get the minutes of the first convention. Kirkman and Lomax Bay got called out as villains against the Prophet Soden and L. Call Givens. Thousands of Moorish Americans followed those leaders that killed the prophet and made Moors parrots, not readers. They don't study, brains hollow. To crush the truth, plant dissension in the ones that follow. Rob the treasury, felt like they hit the lotto. Took advantage of the faithful Moors in their times of sorrow. Moments still critical, 100 years later, the message. Stick to the principles in your actions, be progressive. Don't sell your soul for a title, take your membership role. Watch out for grand cheeks pushing you in a censorship hole. The sellout was great, now they're comfy and won't get the hell out. Active Moors come around, they get clumsy. Not humbly, but act grumpy and jumpy. Active Moors see them touchy and think it's lovely. With faces ugly, I push back so don't shove me. If not for love, it would be just as Dirty Moors get from me. Hitting all reincarnates with writs of discovery and demanding the treasury recovery and law for money. Wearing a fez don't make you a Moorish adept. Dirty Moorish heads are Boy Scouts and cadets. Working for FBI inspectors, slaves for gadgets. Claiming they got pulled but they really dead magnets. Running a fraud that's done cause new Moors are here. One for all for one profit like musketeers. Bay, not Tampa or Buccaneers. I strike nerves like harp or strings on those puppeteers. Pushing misconceptions as teachings and calling it facts. Swinging my scimitar tongue, not a fireman's axe. Quick to call me out as dirty, say I violate acts. If you don't nationalize, know that I annihilate blacks. Nail them through their palms and incepts on beams of wood. Burn crosses on black lawns in my Moorish hood. Black Klansmen like movie from 1960s. White power, not supremacy like Clayton Bigsby. Now I run through illusions, battling my arch nemesis misconfusion. She's been trying to keep me out of course, facing losses, calling all her negative forces. 99 years past, Drew Ali said 50 would pass, and you wouldn't know about me, or even know what I brought for you. NOI and UNIA knew about him too. Most thought that they could bury the movement, be in charge, passive and abuse it. But Drew said new Moors would come with eyes open, seeing and knowing, far from hoping. Far from belief in faith, master fruition. Study the laws of nature, activate intuition. One day our wheels of industry will stop, and when it starts again, Moors will be on top. Drew Ali blessed with latent power. Warned you, get out the way or be ground to powder. Drew Ali didn't kill you fast, but he brought you your title and estate vast. Confusion continues to confuse, no remembrance of Maghrib al-Aqsa by Moorish descendants. Now I run through illusions, battling my arch nemesis misconfusion. She's been trying to keep me out of course, facing losses, calling all her negative forces. Get your emotions out of this. This is all about info. Getting the people in a frame of mind so that they can start handling their own affairs. Because clearly if these people are going to be having billionaire whatever and actors and wrestlers and whatever to take positions in that thing that they call a government, clearly something's wrong with that. Clearly. You can't tell me that the guy who is in Terminator was a governor of this thing that they're saying that is a government. The guy from Terminator was a governor And oh yeah, no, that's okay, that's cool. We want to be part of that government. Go right ahead. And we're going to put it on the record today why Moors who domicile in the jurisdiction known as Canaanland do not subscribe to quote-unquote Canada as our nation state. And we've already done all the research and we already documented it in a book. Welcome to Canada, for people who think that this is a joke out here. Like the slaves escaped north to something better. You already put it on the record. Right? Documented. CalifaMedia.com. Welcome to Canada. Go get it. So you can know about why we say Canaanland and not Canada. And the fact that we started saying Canaanland, it brought more attention to the fact that there's fraud over here. Now we brought this information here 2008 came back with this information because we saw the article ourselves that Noble Drew Ali was supposed to come out here. And we've been out here and we never heard his name ever. But they know about Garvey and they know about all the other stuff out here. They got Garvey's chair locked away in some building out here. People started talking up. After we started talking up, that there's this fraud going on. And it's not some stuff with, Moors. This is common knowledge in the history of Canada. And we'll say Canada because, we always use the example of the Jews. That people know that Jews are Asiatics. But they won't call themselves Jews because those guys call themselves Jews, so whatever. Okay, well, same thing with Canada. Canada's been around before Canada. Canada is a jurisdiction. There's not no borders and stuff like that. There's really a Canada. Before this flag and the country and go to the Olympics and all that stuff, there was a Canada already. We choose not to say Canada because some other people have taken that. And they've been using that as theirs while we were playing Negro, black, colored people up here. But we're not playing Negro, black, colored people anymore. So we spoke with the Empress through Brother Lee Melbay, through our Grand Sheikh, Daweed Ali El, who showed us the map. And that this jurisdiction is part of the Louisiana Purchase. They didn't just get Louisiana and that stuff. When Washita sued, quote-unquote, U.S. Corporation for trying to escheat land, they got awarded land coming up here too. Up here is included in the estate. So for people to say that this is not part of the estate, that's why I said Islam to all the studious Moors. So we start talking because we realize something's wrong. Because when you get into nationality and birthright, it forces you to recognize stuff that you never recognized before. So for all these years, we've been in this jurisdiction. as Negro, black, colored, deaf, dumb, blind, just around here, just walking around, bumping into stuff. And then you get knowledge of self, and you realize that, hold on a second, the city that we live in is older than the country. But not only is the city older than the country, there was Canada's before the Canada in 1867. They only taught us about the 1867 Canada in high school out here. They didn't talk about the Canada before Canada. And that's what made us realize that, oh, there's two jurisdictions of Canada. There's the landmass, that Canada goes back to Kananta, which is indigenous word. Kananta, Kananta. That's why you're watching right now. Ustream, Moorish Holy Temple, Kananta. We're not stupid up here. We know what we're doing. Because this is our birthright. We know what we're talking about. We're here. We're American citizens. Our prophet said that. Now, I don't need no temple to tell me about that, because if you check the article, he wasn't coming up here to start no temple. He was coming up here to bring the knowledge. It's on rvbaypublications.com under the Canaanland Moors page. You'll see the article there. Right? Fidel Castro, we put that up too, right? The class that we did about it years ago. If we're playing games, we need to talk about Canada. Why are we talking about Canada for? That's a private colonial corporation. We're going to have the stuff to shut people up about Canada. It's a corporation. And around the world, internationally, Canada's questionable as to its nation-state identity. What is it? Around the world, it's questionable. And we're only using Fidel because, you know what I mean, he did a transition, so we're just letting him live again. To stress the point that there's dirty Moors in this movement. And if you're going to sit around here talking about, yeah, unity with the Moors, and then you're just going to build with any Moors out here, you're about to find out the hard way. Right? But before we do that, we just want to go to the Federal Interpretation Act. Since these people like to say acts are the law and statutes are the law or whatever, let's go to that, since that's what they're saying is the law, right? And let's just see what the Federal Interpretation Act of Canada says about Canada. Canada, for greater certainty, includes the internal waters of Canada and the territorial sea of Canada. The territorial sea of Canada is also Canada. Water is land. How are they going to say, because the territorial sea is the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, so now we know that that's the Atlantic Ocean. So how are they saying that part of water is land? And claiming to be legitimate. Canadian waters includes the territorial sea of Canada, because remember, there are no seas around. There's no sea around here. There's no sea around here. There's just land, rivers, lakes. There's no sea. Only sea is Atlantic Ocean. The internal waters of Canada. The internal waters of Canada aren't called Canada. Go check. The internal waters, the Great Lakes, the rivers, they don't call those Canada. So somebody's playing games or something. But we'll continue on. Matthew Da Costa, Mathieu Dacosta. Not much is written today about the life of this great blackamoor Ladino Jew named Matthew Da Costa. But the more we learn about him, the more we are convinced that the life story of this incredible, almost impossible man must be heard by the searchers of truth, so that much enlightenment, knowledge, and beauty can be brought to culture, the mental conception of modern humanity, in an upful manner. Da Costa is significant because he is the start of quote-unquote black Canadian culture and heritage. He combined a Ladino Jewish heritage with a then vanishing black European heritage, which we know as the Moors. He was one of the earliest, if not the earliest, Canadian multilingualists on record. Canada has always been a multicultural country. It is thus expected that Canadians will cherish the history of the great Moorish sailor who typified everything that Canada has become today: metropolitan, elan, panache, travel, and multiculturalism. There is documented evidence that Matthew Da Costa has been frequenting the shores of Canada on trade and exploratory voyages for many years before he met Champlain, and a man who is mistakenly known as the first European in Canada. Mistakenly known. Matthew Da Costa. Now this is from the Governor General website. The Governor General of Canada website. It's not Moore's information. This is what the government is saying. The government guys. This is what they're saying. Canada is a parliamentary democracy and a constitutional monarchy. Now remember that's two different things that it just said that it is. It said that it's a parliamentary democracy, which is one form of government, and it's a constitutional monarchy, which is another form of government. This means Canadians recognize the Queen as our head of state. Canada's Governor General carries out Her Majesty's duties in Canada on a daily basis and is Canada's de facto head of state. So the individual who's the head here is de facto. Why would they be de facto? If they have this claim of authority, shouldn't they say that they're de jure? Shouldn't they say that we're the de jure head of state for the Queen? Clearly, they don't have jurisdiction here. if they're calling their stuff de facto. Now let's just go to God, Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. De facto, in fact, actually, indeed, in reality. Thus, an office position or status existing under a claim or color of right, such as a deputy county clerk. A position or status, Governor General, existing under a claim or color of right. Now it can't be a claim of right because they're not the Aboriginal and Indigenous people, so they can't make a claim here. But they can have a color of right and then go to God again, Black's Law Dictionary or Ballantyne's or Bouvier's, whatever, and then look up color. So that's the position that the de facto is. It's colorable. No jurisdiction, no authority. Remember, this is their website that said they're de facto. This is not what we're saying. Canada's website says they're de facto. Remember, this is not us. This is not Canaanland Moors saying this. This is from the Governor General website of Canada, admitting that they're de facto. But you have these Moors out here that aren't from here trying to tell you about what's going on here. And because we're international, just ask anybody who tries to call Canaanland from where they are across the border. And they can't text or they can't call. Why? Because Canada is looked at as international. But it's next door. Why is calling Canada like calling Europe? Why is Canada like calling Europe? That should let you know that something's going on. But nah. They're going to go with the de facto, these Moors. They're going to go with the colonizer. And the colonizers admitting that they're de facto. Right? Colonizers admitting that they're de facto. And they're going with it. Like some claffies. Fools. But keep listening to them. Keep listening to them Moors. You'll get what's coming to you. You just keep listening to them. 2. The Administrator, Justice Canada, in case of incorrect email address for Mr. Hicks, I thank you for your forwarding of this email to Ed Hicks, Counsel, Legislative Services Branch, Justice Canada. Dear Ed, I am directing this email to you as a result of your interest shown and your request that someone enlighten both of us by answering what would initially appear as being a simple question and was presented in my email of November 26, 2002. I have followed up on all the referrals your associates had offered as a result of this request. As directed, I have had a conversation with Professor Ted McDorman, T-E-D, M-C-D-O-R-M-A-N, academic in residence, and even he was not able to provide any direct to the end result pursued. As the matter now sits, it appears that, quote-unquote, in law, none of the quote-unquote provinces are quote-unquote a part of Canada, which in fact is expressly confirmed by the definition of province as provided in the British Columbia Interpretation Act. These guys' law. So remember, their own law is telling on them. Why is there, how are you making a law that is violating what is, and then get called on it and say that that's not what you meant or whatever? But they can do that because it's an act, right? It's an act, right? This non-existence of a statutory definition that would include a province as being a part of Canada causes one to conclude that in law, neither any one of the provinces nor any of the natural person inhabitants of any of those provinces could possibly come under the jurisdiction of any one of the consolidated statutes of quote-unquote Canada. It is my most sincere hope that either yourself or someone will be able to provide me with a statutory instrument that would indicate something contrary to this conclusion as of yet allowed. However, this non-existence does also appear to confirm the well-secreted effects of the Statute of Westminster of December 10th, 1931, whereby the monarchy abdicated and transferred its sovereignty over to the people of what then became quote-unquote former colonies, or otherwise free and sovereign independent nations. This statute makes clear that quote-unquote British colonies shall never again exist, and that no reference to the same shall ever be made at any time in the future, and the term quote-unquote colony shall never appear in any statutory instrument of the British Parliament. As further result of this statute, the office of the Governor-General of Canada, liaison between the monarchy and the various governments, became redundant along with the central legislature. It seems quite ludicrous to even think that the inhabitants of these 10 independent and sovereign nations would ever consider, let alone choose, to share their newfound sovereignty with the central legislature. And remember, these aren't sovereign citizen Europeans. These are legislative services branch. This is quote-unquote the government that's questioning the government. This conclusion also appears to be further confirmed by the admission made on the Governor General's own web page at the following address: www.gg.ca/ROLRESEHTML, which reads, Adrian Clarkson is Canada's de facto head of state. Please correct me if I am wrong, but isn't the head of state the entity from which all governments receive their authority? I am fully aware of the legal definitions provided in quote-unquote Canadian law dictionaries and in Black's Law Dictionary for the terms de facto, de jure, government de facto, and government de jure. Still further, why don't we just read, let's just read de facto government, just so we can be sure as to what that is. Because remember, they said that they're de facto, and they say that they're government. So we could come to the conclusion that they're a de facto government. All right, cool. They're a government, but their status is de facto. See what that is. One that maintains itself by a display of force against the will of the rightful legal government and is successful, at least temporarily, in overturning the institutions of the rightful legal government by setting up its own in lieu thereof. Oh yeah, colonizer. Maintains itself by a display of force. Clearly that's going on right now. Right? If you're saying they're not displaying force right now, just...
Cities are much bigger than villages. A city has many markets, crowded streets, traffic control, offices, more houses, and whatnot. Who is responsible for running the city and all these things in it? A municipal corporation looks after a big city. A municipal corporation manages the people and their activities and all the infrastructure, such as roads, electricity, hospitals, schools, etc. of the city.
The greatest swindle in Canadian history. Toronto exists because of one of the biggest swindles, by Mick Sweetman, M-I-C-K, Sweetman. Toronto exists because of one of the biggest swindles you can think of. In 1787, the British Crown first made what was known as the Toronto Purchase from Mississaugas, who were the indigenous peoples in that region. Now keep in mind there's an area around here called Mississauga, right? There's an area around here called Mississauga. But in 1787, there was a people called Mississaugans that were the indigenous people of this region that they call today Toronto. That prior to that, it was called Toronto. T-K-O-R-O-N-T-O. And then that meant the meeting place or the gathering place. Which is why Toronto is such a multicultural, and everybody has to come here to do this stuff. Because that's what it is, the meeting place. That's just what it is. There's nothing, you know what I mean? That's the ritual that was put down. This is where everybody met, so we called it Toronto. And everybody still meets here. But all this is Aboriginal, indigenous culture on this side. Right? However, this was no tidy real estate transaction. The deed for the original purchase was left blank. The exact size of land was unclear, and the names of Mississauga chiefs were attached to it by a separate piece of paper. Payment for this dubious purchase was some small arms and tobacco. So, just so people can recognize, realize, understand. Same stuff we've been telling people. That way, how come you don't talk about Canada? Because it's the same stuff. It's one jurisdiction, Morocco, that these people were going up and down pillaging. There's no separation. No Canada and U.S. Those are private corporations. Don't listen to these crazy Moors telling you about those aren't corporations here. Trust me, they're corporations. We're here. We know. They make it blatantly obvious here that they're corporations. They don't hide. Like we showed you the tickets. They put it on the tickets. The corporation of the city of whatever. They're not secret about it. Right? And remember, progressive conservative Hudak said he knows this is Morocco. Right? Keep in mind. We're talking about 1787 right? 1700s. Remember, when you do the timeline, you always go with Article 11, right? Articles of Confederation, letting you know that Canada's part of over there. That's what it is. If people want to play like it's not and separate, then hey, that's on them. Do whatever it is that you do. Continue to live in the world of illusion. But the reality is one jurisdiction. January 1794, Governor General Dorchester wrote a letter to John Simcoe, the Lieutenant Governor of Upper Canada, stating that the blank deed was of no validity and called it an omission which will set aside the whole transaction and throw us entirely on the good faith of the Indians for just so much land as they are willing to allow. In December 1974, Dorchester wrote to Alexander McKee, then the Deputy Superintendent General of Indian Affairs, saying proceedings are so informal and irregular as to invalidate and set aside the whole transaction, and that the deed itself is of no validity or value. Swindle of epic proportions. Toronto exists because of a swindle of epic proportions. It took another 205 years for the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation to reach a settlement with the Government of Canada on their obvious claim that proper compensation was not paid for the land. In 2010, a landmark negotiated settlement saw the federal government pay $144 million to settle the land claim of the Toronto Purchase. The amount was based on what was considered a fair price for the land in 1805, extrapolated to $2010. 1805? What dollars they talking about in 1805? Not talking about paper. Not talking about give you the big cardboard and then you just smile at the cardboard. Yeah, we got the check. This is how big our payout is. We have to hold the check with two hands. Right? That's not what this is. Okay? They extrapolated it to $2010 and said $144 million. But they weren't dealing with dollars back then. And the jurisdiction of Toronto is not small. Just check. You know what I mean? This is prime real estate. Because it's on the water. And if you have ships, you're good. Speaking to CBC Radio, Pamela Palmater, academic director of the Center of Indigenous Governance at Ryerson University, said, "Think about it this way. Say you had a First Nation of 5,000 band members and there's a small contingency who want to make a deal with Enbridge to have a pipeline go across a community and the majority didn't want to have that. Well, you can now set up a vote to surrender a piece of the reserve land to allow a pipeline to go through by those handful of people." Palmer nails the essence of what's happening today and how it's the same as 200 years ago. Only instead of a profitable fur trade, Canadian and international corporations are salivating at the prospect of new mineral, oil, and gas resources from Northern Ontario's Ring of Fire, quote unquote, to the expansion of the oil sands in Northern Alberta. Treaties are constitutionally protected. Keep in mind, about 2/3 of reserves in this country were set up via treaties. Those treaties are constitutionally protected. Now, keep in mind, Walter Kuhl, Walter, Kuhl, the country without constitution. So how are treaties constitutionally protected in a jurisdiction where they don't have a constitution? It can under fraud, which is what the whole quote-unquote Toronto Purchase is about. Because in order for them to even get this far, it's based on these so-called treaties that they say are quote-unquote unconstitutional or are constitutionally protected, when in reality they're unconstitutional and they don't protect, which is why they were able to pull off the swindle, because the treaties were a fraud. Because all these Aboriginal people even were supposed to be going back to the treaty. But nah, they want to be the guys who work out the whatever with the colonizer. These guys in Canada. Go check the, once again, their stuff. The Criminal Code of Canada. Criminal Code of Canada, Section 15, where it talks about de facto people don't have no jurisdiction to charge anybody with anything. So keep in mind that all evidence by the quote-unquote government of Canada says that they're de facto. Their stuff says that they're de facto. Not what Moors, that's not what we say. Canada's own stuff says they're de facto. And people are going to have you think, Moors are going to have you think that Canada's a country. Fidel came out and told you what is it. And that was sarcastic because he already knows what's up. That's why he went around personally to convince all these people to not let these people be in the stuff. Because we don't know what they are. We can't let them in our stuff. This is for the American states. Oh, so that would mean that Brazilians are American citizens too. And the people in Paraguay, Guyana, islands, all of them are American citizens. If the frickin' thing is called Organization of American States, clearly, if those states are American, one, they have to deal with the Aboriginal and Indigenous people, copper-colored natives. They were in this land before Europeans came here. Remember, and then that's their definition. Right? You're bound to the continent by heritage. King Alfred Plan told you. And people are going to get you to think that these de facto people are really government. And then the people aren't seeing that as treason. That's how warped it is. That the people aren't even seeing them as treasonous. Actually, some people are. Islam told the Moors who stood up for their nationality and birthrights and stood up for their online university, rvbaypublications.com. Islam to all you Moors. All you Moors that thought that you wanted to do something and didn't do it. All you Moors who did something. All you Moors who said, forget these guys. These guys are stupid. I'm going back to the site to go study. Everybody who sent their energy. Right? Islam. Talking about we should focus on red and white. Now, remember, talk about treason right now. Because they know that the flag is the red flag with the green 5-point star. And they're trying to coerce us into accepting some maple leaf stuff. Who we know through study, because we're out here, you know what I mean? And again, before, you don't care, you know, it's the North or whatever, Canada, hey. You start doing research about Canada, you realize that, well, what do you mean everybody knows about this fraud, that this place is not a country? What do you mean that they have conventions where they're talking about, you know, what are we going to do about this? Out here. Canada, pre-1801, flies the Union flag. Just go do your research on Canada, and you'll see that they have no flag of their own. How are they a nation and they're flying somebody else's flag? They can't be a nation flying somebody else's flag. You can't fly a Great Britain flag over here if this is not Great Britain. At the close of the Great Canadian Flag Debate in 1964, which resulted in the adoption of the maple leaf flag as Canada's national flag, the following year a resolution was passed by both houses of the Canadian Parliament naming the Union flag as the Royal Union flag and designating it as the symbol of Canada's membership of the Commonwealth and its allegiance to the Crown. You tell you that Canada's owned by the Queen? And they're telling you guys BS about no, it's not? Why would they show allegiance to the Crown? They're a sovereign state. Don't forget Statute of Westminster. They're a sovereign state unto their self. Why do they need allegiance to them for? Clearly, they're not sovereign. Clearly, they're not a state or a province or anything else. That is private corporation. Just like the master teacher always taught us that. Yeah, it's only on paper. It's not the land. It's not the land. It's only on paper. It's not the land and it's not anything on the land. So don't think that those buildings have something to do with them. It's a front. They're de facto government. And we're taking the position of de jure because we're the ones who are the heirs. So through the noble works of the prophet, we're able to be that regency for people to learn what it is that they're supposed to learn in order for them to get out from under the democracy. We're not against government. We're against de facto government, which clearly they are. Right, so don't forget the Great Canadian Flag Debate, 1964. 64. That's how long flags have been around. Talking about that's Canada flag. But when you don't study, you sound like a jackass when you talk. When you don't study, and you think that you could just say stuff out of your mouth or whatever like that, you look like a damn fool. And the point, and it's always going to be the point, like we keep saying, is using these people as a beating stick so people could learn. Don't bring your BS around here. This is for studious Moors only. It's not for Moors who want to play, get out of something. It's not Moors who want to play, make $8 million off people's birthright and parade around like I did something. Right? These were studious people. People who realize how much stuff they don't have in their mind and that they need to get stuff in there ASAP. And continuing to realize that the more you put in there, the more you don't know anything. Because there's no, it's full point. Then that's where we want people to be at. Before you start saying, oh man, I'm a Moor and all that stuff. Forget all that. Know who you are before you be who you are. Because if you be who you are without knowing, there's a lot of examples of people who, you know what I mean, people who didn't have the power of Allah with them. Like Brother Mario. Didn't fold. 3 weeks in the goddamn hole. Didn't fold. These people said, you know what? Yeah, he's serious about his birthright. So if you're not willing to do that, don't be running out there talking about your Moors and you're defending up some birthright and stuff like that. If you're not willing to go that far, tread lightly with your birthright. Don't think you're hype. Don't think you're hype because you found out some stuff. Because like we're showing you, because they're de facto, they'll take your head. And don't forget, their judges are de facto and everybody else that works with them is de facto. Oh, you can ask Pilar El Day about that. She'll tell you how de facto their stuff is. De facto. Break every rule in the book just to not admit that they're wrong. Break every rule in the book. Break their own stuff. Why does that happen? They have that power because you gave it to them. Talking BS about that's a government for so long. You gave them all the power. Now they're parading around the power. Now you're mad. You want to march. Why are you marching? You gave them that power that they're abusing your ass with.
Dun & Bradstreet traces its history back to July 20th, 1841, with the formation of the Mercantile Agency in New York City by Lewis Tappan, later called R.G. Dun & Company. Recognizing the need for a centralized credit reporting system, Tappan formed the company to create a network of correspondents who would provide reliable, objective credit information to subscribers. As an advocate for civil rights, Tappan used his abolitionist connections to expand and update the company's credit information. In spite of accusations for invading personal privacy, by 1844, the Mercantile Agency had over 280 clients. The agency continued to expand, allowing offices to open in Boston, Philadelphia, and Baltimore. By 1849, Tappan retired, allowing Benjamin Douglas to take over the booming business. In 1859, Douglas transferred the company over to Ronald Graham Dunn, who immediately changed the firm's name to R.G. Dun & Company. Over the next 40 years, Graham Dunn continued to expand the business across international boundaries. Dun & Bradstreet Incorporated is an American business services company headquartered in Short Hills, a community in Millburn, New Jersey, that provides commercial data to business on credit history, business-to-business sales, and marketing, counterparty risk exposure, supply chain management, lead scoring, and social identity matching. Often referred to as D&B, the company's database contains information on more than 235 million companies across 200 countries worldwide. So we're here on Dun and Bradstreet, and we just wanted to put this on the record, since this website deals with strictly businesses. We'll just put City of Toronto on here, see what comes up. Search. And would you look at that? When you go to Dun and Bradstreet and you put in City of Toronto, the name comes up, Corporation of the City of Toronto. There's one of their offices, 100 Queen Street West, and that's what they call, quote unquote, City Hall. Corporation of the City of Toronto, 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 and it just keeps going. Corporation of the City of Toronto, Corporation of the City of Toronto. Never once did they identify it as a municipality. Never once did they identify it as government. Right? And remember, and keep in mind, that's one page That's one page. Not once did they list it as the Government of Toronto, City of Toronto Municipality, or Municipality of the City of Toronto. They called it Corporation of the City of Toronto. Now, if they were not a corporation, if they are not a corporation, then they should not be able to list themselves as a corporation on Dun and Bradstreet. And remember, like we said, Corporation of the City of Toronto, 100 Queen Street West, Toronto, Ontario. That's Old City Hall. Guess what? The location type for City Hall is listed as on Dun and Bradstreet. The headquarters or the head office of the Corporation of the City of Toronto is City Hall. So I just wanted to put that out there for all the naysayers to go to Dun and Bradstreet and punch in where you live or where you claim to live, whatever city it is, and see if it comes up on Dun and Bradstreet. And if it comes up on Dun and Bradstreet, that should let you know that you're not dealing with governments, you're dealing with private corporations. Islam.
So this is not something that is far-fetched when Moors say that we're ready to govern ourselves. When Moors say, I understand where you're coming from, that, you know, I need an instrument to get behind the wheel of this thing right here. Car, motor vehicle, whatever you want to call it. I understand that you need it. Well, I think that I should be able to govern myself because, you know, I am a national. I'm part of a nation. My state representatives, which are, you know, Grand Sheik, Grand Governor, or whatever like that, you know, they have a department that insures and gives plates and gives cards. I think I'm gonna ride with my state instead of you guys' de facto state. Because keep in mind, this is our ancestral estate. So if anybody is allowed to have states around here, it should be us. Should be us. But you know, just like little youth man just jumped in the tractor, popped that in reverse, did whatever he did. Right? You're not waiting for nobody to slow down and stuff like that. He knows what he's doing. You're not dummy. The youth man with his taxi jumped in the stuff, backed out past the pillar of the house, didn't hit anything or whatever. Half the people with licenses would have hit that pole right there. Half the people with licenses would have been all on the grass, can't even back out. Go forward, then back up again, and then go forward again. And this little youth man just not gone about business. That's why our children are behind. That's why our children got ADHD and stuff like that. Because they want to expand their horizons, and then parents dumb them down. Make them think they gotta wait till they're 18 and stuff like that, but then Jews got bar mitzvah at 13 years old, you're an adult. 13-year adult, so you better go whatever. Well, you go to the continent, you gotta, just tie that little twine on your ankle. Tie the twine on your ankle. Just climb that thing right there. How old are you again? Well, 13? Alright, perfect. Yes. Just climb that. No, keep going up. Just keep going up, a little higher. Alright. And then just jump off the thing. What do you mean? What do you mean? You're 13. You're a man now, so prove your manhood. Jump off the thing with the twine. No, I don't want to do this because... Okay, fine. You don't want to do that one? Swim across that lake right there, crocodile-infested lake. You get to the other side, you're a man. Okay, give me the twine thing, okay. So, keep holding them back. Eventually all the dumbing down is going to erode, and then Spirit's just going to talk through them. And then you're going to have no choice. Because the time really is now. You think the campaign's so hard? You really think that they're campaigning so hard because time's not now? Everybody who's studious knows. Everybody who, from wherever they got it from, wrapped their turban for the first time and put their fez on for the first time and went out into the world and realized what more really means. Totally different for these people. Gonna go to Mr. W.F. Kuhl, K-U-H-L. Walter Frederick Kuhl. Profession, teacher. Political party, Social Credit, New Democracy, Social Credit, House of Commons, Caucus. So he's been around, right? A distinctive national flag and constitutional problems in Canada. This resolution urges the expediency of Canada's possessing a distinctive national flag. I agree that an anomaly exists with respect to the matter of a Canadian flag, and I and my associates in Parliament are in favor of removing this condition. But personally, I consider that under the constitutional conditions prevailing in this country at the moment, such action is premature. To question the question which must occur to every member of this House and to every other citizen in this country is, why do such anomalies exist in our constitutional position? How did they come about? There must be something in Canada's constitutional history that accounts for the circumstances in which we find ourselves. No other part of the British Empire finds itself in the same circumstances. Why are these conditions peculiar to the people of Canada? In endeavoring to answer these questions and in suggesting what I consider to be the proper remedy for them, I am not posing as a constitutional expert, although I may say it is now 10 years since I began my studies on this subject, and I trust I shall not be considered presumptuous in claiming to have added a little to my knowledge in that time. In order to endeavor to account for the contradictions in Canada's constitutional position and to suggest a remedy therefore, I wish to lay down some fundamental premises on which I shall base my entire argument. Locke is credited with saying, "Men being by nature all free, equal and independent, no one can be put out of this estate and subjected to the power of another without his consent. The only way whereby anyone divests himself of his natural liberty and puts on the bounds of civil society is by agreeing with other men to join and unite into a community." The Parliament of Canada did not become the Government of Canada, much less a federal government. It became merely the central legislature of a united colony, a legislative body whose only power was that of aiding and advising the Governor General as agent of the Imperial Parliament. The British North America Act, as enacted by the Imperial Parliament, was not a constitution, but merely an act of the Imperial Parliament, which united 4 colonies into Canada into one colony, with the supreme authority still remaining in the hands of the British government. Further evidence that the British North America Act was not a constitution and that Canada did not become a federal union, I refer to the definition of the term dominion, which is found in Section 18, Paragraph 3 of the Interpretation Act. It reads as follows: "The expression colony shall mean any of Her Majesty's dominions, exclusive of the British Islands and of British India, and where parts of such dominions are under both a central legislature and local legislature, all parts under the central legislature for the province of this definition be deemed to be one colony. Excepting Canada, no country in the empire had a central legislature and local legislatures. Therefore, according to this definition, made 22 years after the enactment of the British North America Act, Canada is deemed to be one colony." Dr. W.P. Kennedy, professor of law in the University of Toronto, states, "I think we have got to get away from the idea that the British North America Act is a contract or treaty. I do not want to go into that, but it is true neither in history nor in law. The British North America Act is a statute and has always been interpreted as a statute." So clearly they're letting you know that constitutions have higher power than statutes. If they're admitting that the thing that made Canada is a statute and we're not even trying to deal with that. Professor N. Rogers of Queen's University states, "Mr. Cowan, you do not describe to the belief that this was a pact or contract?" Mr. Rogers, "I am thoroughly convinced it is not, either in the historical or the legal sense. Then I would quote Dr. Buchesny, Clerk of the House of Commons, who at page 125 states, "It is quite true that if we apply to the British North America Act the principles followed in the interpretation of statutes, it is not a compact between provinces, it is an act of Parliament, which does not even embody all the resolutions passed in Canada and in London prior to its passage in the British Parliament, where certain causes that had not been commended by the Canadian provinces were added." Provinces completely sovereign. Since the condition of sovereignty and independence must be enjoyed by the provinces before they can federate, it was necessary that the British government relinquish its authority over them. This was done through the enactment of the Statute of Westminster on December 11, 1931. By Section 7, Paragraph 2 of the statute, the provinces of Canada were made sovereign, free, and independent in order that they might consummate the federal union with which they wished to create in 1867, but were not permitted to do so. Since December 11, 31st, the provinces of Canada have not acted in their newly acquired status. They have not signed any agreement. They have not adopted a constitution, and the people of Canada have not ratified a constitution. Such action should have been taken immediately upon the enactment of the Statute of Westminster. It is by reason of the failure of the provinces and of the people of Canada to take this action that all the anomalies in our present position exist. I therefore pose this question: whence does the Dominion Parliament derive its authority to govern this country? The Imperial Parliament cannot create a federal union in Canada or constitute a federal government for the people of Canada by virtue of the British North America Act or any other act. This can be done only by the people of Canada, and they have yet to do so. Since December 11, 1931, as an individual citizen of this country, I have had the right to be consulted on the matter of a constitution. I have had the right, along with my fellow citizens, to ratify or to refuse to ratify a constitution, but I have not been consulted in any way whatsoever. I assert, therefore, that until I, along with a majority of Canadians, ratify a constitution in Canada, there can be no constitution, and I challenge successfully contradiction of that proposition.